We'll take a minute now and talk about some of the utensils that we use. Um, a lot of people say never use metal in cast iron. I'm guilty of doing that. You be careful when you do it. You don't want to be scraping it continuously. Just if you're gentle, it's not a big deal. We use wooden spoons and spatulas. Actually, we made this one ourselves on a shaving horse and draw line. But they don't do any damage to your pots or pans. And then the fear is that you'll scratch the seasoning. My theory kind of runs, if your seasoning is in there thick enough to be scratched, you've got too much seasoning in there. You, we'll go over seasoning in just a moment. Now, one thing that I've been getting recently is for Christmas gifts is some of these silicone utensils. And I tell you what, they're great. I really like them. You can get the last drop out. They do wonderful. They work well. We've since then got quite a few silicone spoons and spatulas and things, and I like them very good. Now, one other thing that I guess the point we need to get to that is one of the biggest things is how to season. All right, I'm going to tell you how I season, and it works well for me, so maybe it'll work for you. What I do, well, let's back up a moment. Everybody says, what do you season with? Well, when I'm at home, I season with one thing, and then when I'm on the road demonstrating, I season with other things, simply for it's easier to transport. Now, when I'm at home, I use lard. I really like the way that lard seasons. It leaves a good dry season on there, so it's not collecting every bit of dust, that there is. And when I'm out on the road doing shows and stuff, I don't want to, lard, if it gets too hot, when we're out at a show or something, it will turn to liquid and can sometimes make a mess. If it's in a plastic container, it's not as bad, but you can buy it wrapped in paper as well, so that's when you tend to run into problems. Now, you can use vegetable oils. We've used canola oil, corn oil, vegetable oil, a blend. I'm not a big fan of olive oil because olive oil has a much lower boiling point. But anyhow, we have used pretty much everything. So you test and find what maybe you like because it's the cheapest, or it's the most accessible in your area, or just whatever you prefer. Now, let's say you've chosen a vegetable oil. All right. Now, you can put it on the paper towels, but I don't really like to use paper towels because a lot of times they'll leave traces of them inside. What I do is when one of my old cotton T-shirts have got to where they're no good anymore, I'll wash it, dry it, and then cut it up into little squares. And then I'll just put the little square into one of these plastic bowls for storage. When I'm ready to season, I'll pull out one of those little squares, gather whatever liquid or vegetable oil of my choice, and here's the tip. If you want to do this in an oven in a house, first thing you want to do is put aluminum foil in the bottom because it's going to drip and this makes cleanup a little easier. Second thing you want to do is go ahead and take the battery out of your smoke detector because it's going to go off. Set your oven on 350. Take your pan, put it in the oven for a few minutes, and you want to warm it up. You don't want it popping hot, but you want it warm. Bear in mind, metal as it heats expands, so it opens the pores. So I'll take and kind of preheat whatever let's say this pan. I'll take and preheat this pan before I apply my first coat of oil. Now, when I go to take it out, I'll use an oven mitt and I'll bring it out, and I'll pour a little oil in the bottom, take my cloth, and I'll cover it all over, inside and out, 100%, with a thin layer, because bear in mind, the excess is going to run off, but this is what you want to do. When you put it back in the oven, here's the key. Turn it upside down and put it in the oven. Everything that doesn't soak into the pores, I want it gone. If I turn it this way, and all the excess around the rim and everything's going to come to the bottom, and it's going to be too thick. I don't want a thick layer. I want a micro thin layer of seasoning on there. So I turn my pans upside down and I put them in the oven. All right, it's on 350. I'll leave it for about 45 minutes. I'll cut my oven off. Now, once it's cooled down enough to where I can handle it, but not plumb cold yet, it's about like it was when I started. Take my oven mitt, bring it back out, and I'll cover it all over again with another layer. Turn it back upside down, put it down, turn the oven back on 350, say for 30 to 45 minutes. I'll do that 3 times, all right? And on my final time, I just cut it off, cut the oven off, and I let it cool down. Now, it's almost seasoned to perfection. The very first time you use it, you'll want to fry some bacon or brown some ground beef, cook something fatty, okay? And once you're done, take it out, wipe it out with a paper towel, take a little hot water, a scrubby, rinse it. And she's clean. Place it back on the heat for just a minute to make sure it's dry. Now, the key is storage on these items is just as essential as your seasoning. On my frying pans, I love to hang my frying pans. I want to have continuous airflow, or you can have season go rancid if you store it closed up, especially on Dutch ovens. I've had a Dutch oven given to me because they couldn't get the lid off of it. When you store your Dutch oven, take a wooden spoon, stick between the lid and the pot so that it'll leave enough gap for airflow to go in and out. If my frying pan, if I put it in the shelf, inevitably somebody sets a plate on it. That stops the airflow. If I turn it upside down, then it stops the airflow sitting on the shelf. But if I hang it, then it continuously gets airflow. And then my seasoning's good to go. The two hardest things on your seasoning would be anything tomato based, or if you boil a pot of pinto beans or cook them, say for 8 hours, boiling for a long period. And during those times, after I'm done and I wash them, I may heat them up and go ahead and apply a thin layer on it again before I store it, if I'm doing tomato based or boiling for a long time. So that's something to bear in mind. But then you're pretty much ready to go. Now on my pan that I do my cornbread in, once my cornbread's done, I turn it over, cornbread falls out, I take my dish towel, dry it out, and I hang it. I don't wash it, I don't do anything with it. I'm not telling you to do that, but that's how I do it, okay? When I get ready to make another cake of cornbread or regular bread, I'll heat my pan up, put a thin layer in it, then put my cornmeal in there. So it gets a little oil each time that I go to cook my cornbread, but other than that, it never gets washed. That's the way I grew up. It works for me. I don't know if it works for you or not, but it's something you might want to bear in mind. But you'll want to bear this in mind. If you've got, where you're taking your Dutch oven to other events, or you've got people coming to your home, at the end of the day, you want to make sure you end up with your Dutch oven. So what I did, I went by where these people make tags for your dog's collars. And I just had them to make me up some little tags. I hope you can see it there. It's like you'd put on your dog collar. It says Gary L on it. So I know at the end of the night, I've got my Dutch oven when I leave, because some of my buddies don't take as good a care of theirs as I do mine. So that's something you might want to bear in mind. One other thing, never store food in cast iron. Number one, it's not good for your seasoning. Number two, it will take on the taste of cast iron. So don't store food in them. Once you're done cooking, go ahead and put them in something else. If you want to leave it in there while you're serving and stuff, that's not a big deal. But I wouldn't store food in it overnight, because it's not what it's designed for, and it's not good for it. Like I say, it will taste different. So it's excellent for cooking, not good for storing. And bear in mind, remember this, when you're cooking, use a lower heat than you think you need. Cast is great for heat distribution. I think we've mentioned that once already, but it's important, so we want to go over it again. Use a lower heat than if you think you would need. Now, we'd also mentioned using hot water and the plastic scrubbies to clean them. I know sometimes it's just, in our genes, we have to use soap. Oh, it's not clean unless we use soap. Every time you use soap on your cast iron, you're working against your seasoning. You're removing it out. Some of the harsher detergents will strip a pot, and then you've got to start all over again with your seasoning process. So these little plastic scrubbies that I use, I've got, near our sink, I've got a special section that I put the ones for my cast iron, because I don't want anybody else even having a trace of soap on them. So make sure not to use any soap. No steel wool, nothing real harsh. If you've got it seasoned properly, one of these little plastic scrubbies and some warm water, and they're hot water, either one, you don't burn yourself, but you want it hot enough to, to get in there and clean. And you'll find that you'll enjoy your cast. It'll serve you well. it'll last forever, and it'll work out all the way around.